Hey everybody, Mike Naso here with the latest on the tropics because it is June 1st, which means we are officially in hurricane season 2024, which runs officially from June 1st to November 30th. This is predicted by every prognosticator to be a very, very active hurricane season, and I'll tell you why in just a second. However, I wanted to go over the name list for this year. Back in 1979, the World Meteorological Organization came up with 6 different name lists for the Atlantic, and they alternate male and female names, and they're rotated once every 6 years unless a hurricane is deadly or destructive to warrant retiring and replacing the name. So this name list was actually first used in 1982. Then it was used again in 88, and then it was used again in 1994, and then in the year 2000, 2006, 2012, and then 2018 was the last time this name list was used. Now, we start with Alberto. That's a name from the original. That's been on the list since 82. So has Burl, Chris, and Debbie. And Ernesto. The first 5 names here have all been on the list since it started. We've never had a destructive Hurricane Chris or a destructive Hurricane Ernesto. Let's hope we could keep it that way this year. Francine, that one was Hurricane Florence in 2018, slammed into North Carolina, caused a lot of problems. Gordon, that name was a replacement from Gilbert back in 1988. Helene, Isaac. Do you know Isaac is the only I name that remains on any lists? It is the only original I named storm. Then we have Joyce, which replaced Hurricane Joan of 1988. We have Kirk, which replaced Hurricane Keith back in 2000, which struck Belize very hard. Leslie, we have Milton, that's a new addition in 2018. Hurricane Michael devastated the Florida Panhandle as a Category 5 hurricane, one of only 4 Category 5s on record to hit the United States. We took Michael off the list, replaced his name with Milton. Nadine, Oscar, Patty, Raphael. Sarah is a new name. Hurricane Sandy in 2012. Everybody remembers that. So we have Sarah, Tony, Valerie, and William. And we might exhaust that name list and move on to the auxiliary name list if this is a busy year. Obviously, any one of these hurricane names could be the one that hits you. Now, the next week, we are not expecting anything in the tropics. It's going to be slow out there. Right now, from the National Hurricane Center, looking at the satellite imagery, some good waves leaving Africa. That's a bad sign of things to come, especially come August and September as they move towards the west. You'll see this intertropical convergence zone, the ITCZ, as we call it. This will shift a little bit north as the months of summer roll by, and then the waves will start to move more towards the Caribbean and areas of the Western Atlantic. Right now, nothing there. Same in the Caribbean. This is the area we look for this time of year for any development would be usually the Western Southwest Caribbean. We don't have anything down there right now because of this. Look at all of this wind shear, which is just ripping apart anything that would try and develop. That's great news. We don't have to worry about any hurricane development anytime soon. There's another look at the water vapor imagery. Note the shear here just blowing in that direction, ripping apart anything that would remotely try this early to develop. So we don't have anything to worry about. But this map is very concerning. This is a sea surface anomaly map, and notice all the abnormally warm water here in the Atlantic Basin. This is very, very troubling. The waters are very warm. The anomalies are off the charts. This is the latest sea surface temperature. This is the line here is 2024, where we're at right now, and this is the average of where we should be. So we are way above average. And if you incorporate other memorable hurricane seasons and say, well, what about like 2005, the year of Katrina? We're still above that. If you say, what about 2020, the busiest year on record? We're still above that. Last year, very warm waters. We're still above that. So by all indications, we are going to be dealing with a very, very busy hurricane season. Dr. Phil Klotzbach from Colorado State University issued his prediction, and right now the official hurricane prediction from Colorado State is for 23 named storms. That would exhaust our 21 name list, by the way. 23 named storms, 11 hurricanes, and 5 of them major hurricanes being Category 3, Category 4, or Category 5 storms. That's a lot of storms. That's a lot of darts aiming for the bullseye. Now, some of the analog years, the years that we look back on and go, okay, well, the weather patterns sort of fit what was that year. What were the hurricane seasons that matched this year? One of them was 1878. Now, this was way back in the 1800s, so records weren't as reliable, but we had a lot of activity, and this system, known as the Gale of 1878, struck near Wilmington, North Carolina as a Category 2 hurricane, and it was one of the strongest storms to hit areas of Washington, D.C., and the mid-Atlantic. It was very, very devastating, killed about 71 people, and that was in 1878. Another hurricane season that matches this one is 1926, and look at the activity here close to Florida. We had several memorable storms. We had a July major hurricane that struck the Bahamas as a Category 4, went on to hit the east coast of Florida as a Category 2. Then we had a major hurricane, a Category 3, strike southeastern Louisiana, very devastating. And then we had this storm. In September of 1926, the Great Miami Hurricane. The reason that the sports team named themselves the Miami Hurricanes was this beast. It roared west-northwest, north of Puerto Rico, north of Hispaniola, through the Bahamas, slammed into downtown Miami as a high-end Category 4 hurricane. That was what happened to Miami Beach. Miami Beach was devastated. And to end that year in 1926, we had a Category 4 hurricane strike Havana, and it killed over 700 people in Cuba and then skirted Florida. So 1926 was quite a bad hurricane season, and that's one of the analog years for this year. Another one is 1998. I remember tracking in 1998. We had Hurricane Bonnie slam into North Carolina as a strong hurricane. Hurricane Earl hit the panhandle of Florida. We had Hurricane George take a devastating track over the islands, Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, Cuba, Key West, finally landing in Biloxi Gulfport and killing hundreds of people. And then the season ended with Hurricane Mitch, a Category 5, that buried itself down here over Honduras and Nicaragua and was the second deadliest hurricane on record. It killed over 12,000 people because it sat there and spun flooding rains. It set the country of Honduras, the nation of Honduras, it set them back over 50 years. And George was one heck of a hurricane. It really looked for a while like this was going to be the next Hurricane Andrew. The models consistently wanted to bring it like that towards southeast Florida. It stayed over Cuba and hit the Keys, and it was a little less than what we thought it would be for the Gulf, but still, what a beast. And that hurricane season is one of the analogs for this year. So what is this hurricane season going to bring? Nobody knows for sure, but it looks like we're going to be transitioning into more La Nina conditions, which is more favorable for upper-level winds, and away from an El Nino. So that, combined with the excessively hot waters, it looks like we are in for one heck of a hurricane season. I have a lot of activity coming up on this channel. Please subscribe and stay tuned. There might even be Patreon things in the future. I'm trying to work on some special videos, looks back at memorable hurricanes, and I hope all of the fan base will follow when the time comes. Until then, I'm Mike Naso with the latest on the tropics as hurricane season 2024 begins.